If you keep fancy goldfish, you know that feeling. That little pang of worry when you see one of your beautiful fish just struggling. Well, today, we are going to do a deep dive into one of the most common and honestly, most preventable issues out there, bloat. Let's get into how you can master your fish's diet and keep them happy and healthy for years to come. Oh, it's a sight that just stops your heart, isn't it? Your fish is floating kind of weird, maybe even upside down, and you can just tell they're in distress. It's one of those high-stakes, super emotional moments that every single fancy goldfish owner absolutely dreads, and your mind just starts racing. And your first thought is almost always some kind of complex disease, right? You start thinking about medications, maybe water treatments, or even setting up a quarantine tank. But here's the thing. More often than not, the real culprit is something much, much simpler. It's something that's been hiding in plain sight the whole time. It's the food you give them every single day. So let's get to the bottom of this sinking feeling, or I guess floating feeling is a little more accurate. We're going to pull back the curtain and see what's actually going on inside your fish when they start having these buoyancy problems. And this is actually the good news. Because if the problem is the food, that means the solution is completely in your control. You don't need to be a fish veterinarian to fix this. You just need to rethink what's going in their dinner bowl. Okay, so to really understand the problem, we first have to understand the fish. You see, the very thing that makes fancy goldfish so unique and so adorable, that compact, eggy, round body, well, that's also its biggest anatomical challenge when it comes to digestion. It really all boils down to two main mechanical issues. First, their little digestive tracts are all squished in there, which makes them incredibly prone to constipation. Gas builds up, it presses on their swim bladder, and bam, suddenly they can't control where they are in the water. And second, when they eat at the surface, they gulp down air, which gets trapped and causes the exact same problem. And this, right here, is where dry pellets become the villain of our story. As they float, they encourage that frantic gulping at the surface. But even worse, they act like tiny little sponges. They expand with moisture after they've been eaten, creating blockages inside that already super crowded digestive system. Now, we're all told to buy that high-protein, high-quality food. And look, for growth, especially for a Ranchu's head development, that's absolutely true. But high-protein food is also tough to digest. And when the water gets cooler, a fish's metabolism just slows way, way down. So feeding them a rich, hard-to-digest meal at that point, that's just a recipe for disaster. This leads us straight into one of the biggest, most heated controversies in the fish-keeping world. You will hear passionate arguments from very experienced keepers on both sides of this one. Should you be soaking your fish's food pellets before you feed them? It seems like such a simple question, doesn't it? But the answer, it turns out, has real consequences for your fish's health. So let's actually look at what each side is arguing. And this just perfectly illustrates the dilemma. On one hand, soaking food for too long absolutely leaches out essential water-soluble nutrients, like vitamin C, right into the water before your fish ever eats it. But on the other hand, feeding them bone-dry pellets invites that dangerous internal expansion we just talked about. So, what are you supposed to do? So how do you solve this? Well, the solution is actually really simple and kind of elegant. You don't soak them until they turn to mush. Just add a few drops of tank water and let them sit for just a minute or two. The goal is to let them pre-expand just enough while they're still firm, which preserves those vital nutrients and makes them safe to eat. It's the best of both worlds. But here's the thing. Even the most perfectly prepared pellet can cause problems if it's fed at the wrong time of year. And this brings us to the real secret, the core principle that will totally change how you care for your fish. You have to realize their diet shouldn't be static. It has to change with their environment. And your best friend for this? It's your thermometer. I mean, think about it for a second. A fish out in nature doesn't eat the exact same processed food every single day of the year. Its diet changes with the seasons, with what's available. By mimicking this natural variety, you give their digestive system exactly what it needs, right when it needs it. Okay, so that's the big idea, but what does it actually look like in practice, day to day? Let's break down a simple year-round guide that puts this whole philosophy into action, and it's all based on the temperature of your tank water. And when you look at it this way, it just makes so much sense. When the water's warm, above 70 degrees Fahrenheit, it's growth season. Their metabolism is fired up so they can handle those high-protein pellets. As it cools down into the 60s, you switch to high-fiber, plant-based foods, like shelled peas, to help keep their system moving. And once it drops into the 50s, their digestion is really slow. That's when you feed an easy-to-digest carbohydrate, like wheat germ, which gives them energy without risking a blockage. And this is a super, super important note, especially for anyone who has an outdoor pond or lives in a colder climate. Below 50 degrees Fahrenheit or about 10 Celsius, their digestive system has pretty much shut down for the winter. It's actually much safer to stop feeding them completely until the water warms back up in the spring. So if you take away one single thing from all this, let it be this. It's not about finding one perfect food. It's about creating a varied, rotational diet that adapts to your fish's changing metabolic needs. Variety, guided by that thermometer, is the single best way to keep your fish healthy. And really, that's what this is all about, isn't it? Taking these steps doesn't just lead to a healthier, more comfortable fish that swims with perfect balance. It brings you peace of mind. It transforms that moment of panic into a moment of pride, knowing you have a happy, thriving pet.